Chapter 6 is almost over, so in this video I want to take a look at all the seasons from the last year and rank them from best to worst. For each season I'll discuss the map, the meta, whether it was good for competitive, and my personal thoughts on it. I'll talk about every season in depth, and then at the end of the video I'll give you my ranking. Let's not waste any more time, let's start with Chapter 6 Season 1. This season brought a whole new map to the game. It was themed around Japanese culture, and we ended up with some really cool locations. Not only were the POIs very visually appealing, but they were also quite technical as well. You had Shining Span, where you could land right on the top of the bridge, and there was also an underground section underneath the road as well. Fights at Magic Mosses were always interesting because there was such a big cover of trees, and Seaport City, which provided great moments over the whole chapter. The areas themed around ancient Japanese culture were cool too. POIs such as Shogun's Solitude, Flooded Frogs, all very good. My biggest issue with the theming this season was that it was quite repetitive. A lot of the POIs felt quite homogenous. For example, I don't know if we needed all of Twinkle Terrace, Lost Lake and Warrior's Watch. They all felt quite similar. A similar story with Masked Meadows and Hopeful Heights. Maybe you could have seen a bit more variance, but obviously that comes in later seasons. But enough about the map, let's talk about the meta. And I actually really enjoyed this season because it had the Void Oni masks. This whole chapter was punctuated by its unique movement items, and Chapter 6 Season 1 was no exception. The Void Oni masks allowed players to teleport up to 15 times in a game. The Typhoon Blades were also in, which functioned similar to the Kinetic Blades from Chapter 4 Season 2. This rotation was really fun, and I also think it had quite a high skill ceiling. With the masks, it was quite hard to coordinate rotates together. Often we'd see trios landing all over the place after trying to teleport, so the best teams that were able to stick together during the endgame benefited. This season also introduced the dominant AR and shotgun of the chapter. We had the Hollow Twister AR, which obviously had a scope and was also hit scan. That did lead to a lot of surge trading throughout this chapter, but the gun was fun. We also have the Sentinel Pump Shotgun. This, again, a very fun shotgun. It had a high structure damage, so it wasn't to everyone's liking, but it did make for some good fights. Other things added this season included sprites. You had the Water Sprite, which gave you shield, and the Wind Sprite, which launched you into the air. These could be found at shrines across the map, and they were a nice addition. We also saw the introduction of boons, collectible cards that give you advantages in the game. As well as that, the island was very strong this season. If you take a look at Venno's FNCS win, a lot of that was because they claimed island so much. You also have the Shogun X medallion that was available from beating the Shogun X boss on the island. This gave the invisibility effect whilst the player was sprinting and was incredibly broken in solos. I personally thought this meta was very enjoyable. It did lack a good sniper, but it towed the line well between not being too boring but also not being too broken. It was good. From a competitive perspective, we saw Peterbot, Cold and Ritual get together. They did dominate throughout the season, but they weren't able to win the FNCS, being beaten out by Poyo, Acorn and Aegis. Venno, Vico and Flixie won FNCS on EU, beating out Malibuca, Ping and Wox for first place. This season also saw battles between Polish and French players, a rivalry that would last right up until Globals. The spawn fights at Lost Lake between Podesai's team and Kami's team were very chaotic. The whole situation was pretty fun from a neutral perspective. And who can forget that this was the season we saw a real fan favourite team, Savage, Mongrel and Panzer playing together, famously landing at Bird, and they actually ended up being very successful, finishing 8th in FNCS Grand Finals. Chapter 6 Season 2. We saw some new POIs added to the map: Crime City, Outlaw Oasis, Lone Wolf Lair and Shiny Shafts. Drop spots were very important this season. There were vaults at Crime City, Lone Wolf Lair and Masked Meadows, as well as server rooms around the map that gave deal bits. These deal bits could be taken to the black markets around the map, which could be used to buy items. The actual meta this season was really fun. Bats were introduced as the main mobility item. These gave players jumping and speed boosts. For such a simple item, it was actually really fun, and I would probably say it was my favourite movement item of the chapter. Gold splashes were added too. These allow players to swing their pickaxe faster and farm mats quickly, as well as to sprint quicker. You could also get this effect from a river that flowed through the new biome, which is quite cool. Another item of map rotation in this season that many people might have forgotten about were the armoured trucks. These could be found around the map, spawning at different locations. Once you defeated the NPC guards, you could take the truck and use it. Obviously in competitive where cars are vaulted, this was actually quite a good strategy. Chug Jogs came back, but instead of having to wait 15 seconds to pop them, instead they gave 200 health and you could use that over time. This ended up being a pretty good change. There were other items added this season, but they weren't carried that much. You had the pump and dump shotgun, which acted as both a shotgun and an SMG. The outlaw shotgun was added. This wasn't my favourite gun, largely because it only had 2 uses before you had to reload it, but also because the Sentinel pump shotgun was just so much better. The Falcon Eye sniper was added, which had 2 different scopes. It was actually a really cool item. Not many people carried it because obviously the movement items took precedence, but it was pretty cool. I liked it. I wouldn't mind seeing it return in Chapter 7. And lastly, Epic added Thermite. The main gimmick with this is you used it to get into the vaults, but you could also throw it on players' builds. It wasn't really carried that much, but in the early game it had some use. The FNCSs on EU and NA Central were both incredibly good this season. We had Vanya, Pixie and Marius win on EU, narrowly beating out Fredoxy, Pablo Wingu and Chino. The season-long narrative of Fredoxy's team dominating the reigning champions Vico, Veno and Flixie off spawn at Marsh Meadows was very entertaining too. Pixdom and Demus also managed to come third in that tournament. 2025 was their breakout year. They managed 5th place in Season 1, and to come third in their second ever FNCS together was very impressive. Over on NA Central, we saw Peterbot, Cold and Ritual narrowly beat out Clicks, Higgs and Eomzo to take the FNCS title. This tournament will be remembered for its final game, where Peterbot's team hunted down Clicks' team trying to kill them, and there was of course the infamous Chug Splash incident, which debatably cost Clicks' team the 1st place. Really fun season, a good meta, good tournaments, quite a lot of surge trading, but you could say that about all the seasons in this chapter. Let's move on to the first mini-season. Galactic Battle was the Star Wars collaboration which lasted a month. Overall, this just wasn't good. The meta was strange, all the guns had ridiculous names, so you didn't even know what you were carrying half the time. Most of them were quite weak, some of them were too broken. You had the lightsabers, one of which acted like a boomerang, one of which could literally pull players out from behind builds, so these were incredibly broken. The Jawa Scatter Blaster, whilst being quite a fun shotgun, hit ridiculously hard, making it very difficult to counter. For me, the defining part of this season was the fact that ammo was removed. It completely changed the way that the game was played, and not for the better. The new POIs were fun, but they didn't make up for the fact that this season wasn't that interesting. The season wasn't great from a competitive perspective. We didn't have too many tournaments. There was the weekly FNCS showdown, but because the meta was so bad and because it was a mini season, these cups just didn't feel that fun. We did have the FNCS Pro-Am during this time period, which was fun, but because it's reload, I'm not going to include it in this video. It was certainly a unique system. I'm glad it didn't last longer than a month. Chapter 3 was superhero themed. The meta was initially horrendous, with tracking visors allowing you to see where other players were, and base boosts which could easily break builds. Both of these items got taken out before the FNCS season started, but they weren't fun at all. However, the movement items that followed were really fun. The mist form allowed players to turn into a bird for a few seconds before they transformed back into the player. This was actually a really good rotation item. Whilst players were in the mist form, they were invulnerable, which meant they didn't take player or storm damage, so there were a lot of interesting applications for this item. Late on in the season, we saw the Surf Cube get added as well. This was actually a really balanced item, and it was very good in solo cash cops. Season 3 saw the introduction of hero ranks. Depending on how well you played during the game, you would have a rank to the side of your screen, and the higher you managed to get that, the more rewards you could get. I'm quite neutral on hero ranks. I'm not the biggest fan of them because I feel like it's just another thing to think about during the game, but there was nothing majorly wrong with them either. The Spire Rifle got added. This was quite a fun item. It functioned similar to the Pulse Rifles that we've seen in the past. We also saw the introduction of the Kill Switch revolvers. This allowed players to stop dead in the middle of the air and take more accurate shots. Initially, I didn't even think that people would carry this item, but some of the top pros got very good with it. The DMR was also added back, which definitely did not help the surge trading problem. From a competitive perspective, we saw one of the best finishes to an FNCS ever on NA Central. Peterbot and Poyo have been battling it out all season at the new POI, Demon's Domain. In the weeks before FNCS, the spawn fights were quite even, but Poyo's team did look slightly better. Peterbot ended up leaving and going to Brutal Boxcars, but with them 90 points behind Poyo's team, with one game left of the FNCS Grand Finals, they made the decision to land at Demon's Domain. They took down Poyo's team and went on to win the game, meaning they just about secured first place in the tournament. EU saw Fredoxy, Pablo Wingu and Chino, who obviously finished second in the previous season, go one better and win the FNCS. Chapter 6 Season 4 was kind of a weird one. I feel like it can be split into two parts. pre-globals and post-globals. The main theme of the season was the bugs. There were a bunch of POIs where you had to fight them off to secure loot. Unlike the previous 3 main seasons, there wasn't one unique mobility item. Instead, crash pads and Flowberry Fizz was the meta, but this was still both fun and balanced. I really do think that Chapter 6 can be defined for its excellent movement metas, or at least the main seasons can. The mini seasons, not quite so much. The Rector Revolver was really fun. It was interesting to see players carry that alongside shotguns. It's crazy to think that double pump would be such a viable strategy in 2025, but the top pros really made this item work for them. I hope that for one season in Chapter 7, we see the Rector Revolver return. Other items included the Mega Launch Pads, which sent you so high and so far, a really broken movement item, the Sweeper Shotgun, which was terrible, the OXR Rifle, which was pretty fun, there was the minigun, but that did end up getting vaulted. So yeah, pre-globals, the meta was pretty balanced, and what a tournament globals was. We saw Queasy, Swizzy and Murstache have an incredible day 1, and they just about hung on day 2 to claim the title. In the month after globals ended, we saw the meta shift constantly. Crash pads were in and out of the game due to bugs, we had masks be randomly added for a week and then taken out. It was all over the place. Each week had a different meta, so it was very hard for teams to be consistent. We did have some Halloween areas added, which was cool. We also had 2 major solo tournaments in one weekend. We had the 100k Razorland in Germany, which was won by Cammy, and then the solo series, which was won by Teeny. This season was fun, but it's just hard to categorize because it almost feels like 2 seasons combined into one. They were both so different. Now let's move on to the last season before I do the ranking, and that is the Simpsons mini season. For this we got an entirely new map, which was pretty fun, a little bit smaller than normal, which I don't mind. It was cell shaded as well. Initially I thought that might be a problem, but it ended up looking really good. My big issue with this season was that Battle Royale lobbies were reduced from 100 players to 80 players. I really don't like that Epic made that change. I know they're probably going to go back to 100 from next year, and it will probably stay like that forever. I just don't like the idea of messing with the fabric of the game like that, because the fact that lobbies are 100 players is such a pivotal part of Fortnite. If that changes, so does the whole game. The movement meta wasn't great in this season either. Blinky Fish were good, they gave you the 0 point effect, but they were kind of few and far between, which meant players spent a lot of time fishing. And in a season where games had reduced time due to the fact that less players are on the map, you don't really want to be watching too much fishing. The shotgun meta was also quite strange. We had the Ranger, which only has 1 bullet, the Thunder shotgun, which takes an eternity to reload, and the tactical shotgun, which hits for nothing a lot of the time. You might think from how I said that, but I didn't like the selection, but I actually thought it was quite fun. For only a month, I don't mind changes like that. It's nice to see something different. We also had the balloon gun, which was incredibly annoying, and Krusty Burgers, which ended up being the main healing item. And from a competitive perspective, all we saw in this season was victory cups. It was fun, and it was good to see squads tournaments return, and I know it's only a mini season so you can't expect too much, but the simple truth of the matter is there weren't a lot of great tournaments in this season. So now it's time to do the final ranking. In 6th place, I've got mini season 1. The meta was strange, there weren't that many changes, the tournaments weren't fun. It's quite hard to find redeeming factors for this season other than the fact it only had to last for a month. I've got mini season 2 in 5th place. Whilst the map was fun and it did feel like a breath of fresh air, the meta was just quite strange and the tournaments weren't great, so it can't go any higher than 5th. In 4th place, I've put season 4. Now that might seem like a bit of a surprise considering that this was the season we had globals and the solo series and the Eraserland, so some great tournaments. I didn't like the lack of solo events before globals. The theming also wasn't as strong this season. I just don't think it's as good as the other ones, and that's why I put it in 4th. In 3rd place, I've gone for season 3. Now this did probably have the best FNCS of the lot, with Peterbot beating Poyo in the last game. I just think that the other 2 seasons were a bit better. In 2nd place, I've gone for chapter 6, season 1. There was nothing really not to like about this season. The new map was fun, we had the Void Only masks and the Typhoon Blades, which made movement good. The tournaments were great, we had some good FNCSs. This was a good season. The first season of every chapter is generally good, and this was no exception. And in 1st place for what is in my opinion the best season of the chapter is chapter 6, season 2. It was hard to separate between this and season 1. The question I asked myself was which one did I have more fun in, and the Lawless season was just that bit more entertaining. I enjoyed running around the map W keying with the bat. Watching tournaments this season was great too. We had 2 good FNCSs. For me, this is the best season of chapter 6. Let me know if you agree in the comments below. Which season did you enjoy playing? Which season were you not a fan of? I want to hear what you guys think. Thank you very much for watching the video. See you in the next one.